Today, I'm going to be covering the Clockwork Mage. The Clockwork Mage is one of my favorite heroes in Heroes vs. Hordes, and the one that I think is the absolute best. But why, you might be asking, is she the best hero in Heroes vs. Hordes? Well, I'll get into that today. I'll go through her forge, her skills, her kit, and what makes this time bomb tick. Because, at the end of the day, when time moves so slowly, nothing can hurt you. And I'm Coles, a high-level HVH player. You can become a member here or on Patreon for access to a monthly HVH giveaway. And please, ask any questions you have about the Clockwork Mage, as every little bit of engagement helps in the algorithm. Now on to my favorite timepiece. I'll start off by looking at the base kit for the Clockwork Mage. The big thing to note here is how cooldown is rampant throughout her kit, and that makes sense as she's the master of time. And cooldown basically makes you attack way faster. It's the single biggest damage amp from the basic talents. Now, you'll see that she gets increased cooldown from star level in her base stats. And then looking through her level progression, you'll see a whole lot of increased damage against slowed Horde. And that's the other half to her kit. Cooldown and slowing Horde down. Bending time like that allows you to hit Horde a whole lot while avoiding all of their attacks. Her chrono discs are magical weapons that shoot out in two directions, both in front of her and behind her, leaving her sides relatively exposed. So to maximize her damage, you are going to need to move those around to make sure that they hit every horde. Her chrono discs evolve into chrono blades, significantly amping her damage and adding a spinning disc that traverses the battlefield. But more on that a little bit later. Because for now, I want to focus on her skills. Clockwork Mage has two unique aspects to her skills that make her so strong. For being one of the original heroes without adventure hero scaling, it's the synergy between her skills and her ultimate that allow her to beat the hardest content in the game. Time manipulation slows Horde by an increasing percentage for each level. That slow is massive, and because her discs are so wide, you're able to hit a whole ton of Horde with each set. You then combine that with Clockwork Bomb. Clockwork Bomb gives her discs a 20% chance to add a little bomb to them, which then explodes half a second later or when the Horde die. This explosion can take out neighboring Horde. One Clockwork Bomb can set off a chain reaction where it hits every other Clockwork Bomb, causing a whole bunch of Horde to take a whole ton of damage really quickly. But it all comes together in her ultimate, Quantum Rift. Quantum Rift procs off of her disc slowing Horde, or really any weapon slowing Horde, which means you can proc it in all game modes. During Quantum Rift, you slow Horde by 80%. That's way more than even in Time Manipulation's highest level. It also decreases your cooldown and increases your movement speed. So if you slow down Horde and you move faster, she's almost like Trinity from the Matrix, being able to bend time to her will. But the fact that it procs off of just slowing down Horde means that you'll be able to proc it in Nightmare mode and in Boss Brawl without actually having to clear any of the Horde, making it much easier to do. So you combine the fact that her Chrono Discs slow Horde down, set up Clockwork Bombs, and then proc her ultimate, Quantum Rift. And once those chain reactions of time bombs start occurring, then you're able to do much more damage than you'd expect from a hero of her time and place. But because she's older, she got lucky that her kit synergizes so well, and she doesn't get as much support from her forge. The Clockwork Mage evolves her weapon off of Cooldown Tome. This is actually her biggest weakness. Cooldown Tome is completely wasted at the end of the game in things like Hard Mode Arena and in Nightmare mode, not to mention Dragon's Tower. And so evolving her weapon essentially means taking one set of tomes that are completely pointless. Now, it is typically worth it, particularly in Hard Mode Arena or in Dragon's Tower, to squeeze out the extra damage from evolving her weapon. So you take the hit to the tome, but it nets out to more damage. It is a big drawback though. It thematically makes sense to use Cooldown Tome, but if they moved it to something like Duplicator Tome, it would actually make her much stronger. Now, early in the game, that's not an issue, so we can focus on her forge and how to improve that. At level 1, you either get Temporal Rush or Time Strike. Time Strike increases her damage, and Temporal Rush reduces cooldown. This is an old school forge. You take cooldown until you've hit the cooldown cap, and then you take the damage. But because she has so much cooldown from her ultimate and elsewhere in the kit, you might just take the damage every single time. At level 2, you can either take more area of effect, or more projectiles. Extra disc is probably the bigger increase to your damage here. Each additional projectile has marginally less damage than the previous one, but it should do more than 10% area of effect up until the late game. So for all intents and purposes, extra disc is the way to go. Her 3-star forge fits with her theme and increases the damage against slowed enemies. A 1.05 multiple is great and you'll take that. However, she gets a massive damage boost from her 4-star Forge. Chrono Blades significantly amp the damage of her Chrono Discs, and they introduced a new disc that just flies around the whole map. That combination will allow you to clear all of hard mode with no problem. Add on, at 5-star Forge, a chance for bleeding or for an increased disc size. Personally, I prefer bleeding, as that'll add the status effect multiple later in the game. But early in the game, the increased disc size will basically be hitting half the screen half the time for you, and that's also really strong. You'll notice here that unlike the recent heroes, none of these Forge options impact her skills, which limits her end game cap, and why other heroes do become stronger at the very end of the game. That said, I have proof from people in my guild of clearing everything in the game, except for maybe the very end of Dragon's Tower, using Clockwork Mage. So you can beat Nightmare Mode and Hard Mode Arena with her without issue. Combine that with the fact she's super strong early in the game with her cooldown, and you have what I think is the best hero in the game. And what makes her so strong in the early game? Well, that's being able to clear out Arena. Clockwork Mage is the queen of early game Arena. Being able to clear all 20 stages of the Arena is massively important early in the game. That'll allow you to forge up your base weapon set, but also hit some of the main hero weapons for heroes that you own. The combination of those two will give you access to a whole set of weapon globals and make the base weapons much stronger. So clearing Arena is vitally important, and she's really good at it because of the slow on her kit. Most other heroes have to rush Boomerang in Arena in order to clear it, but because she has a slow, she can just focus on damage, allowing her to clear higher stages of Arena with much lower gear levels. Think something like all legendary, and it's already possible to clear all of Arena. Not to mention that you can basically clear all of normal mode and all of hard mode without even needing her Forge. So her Forge is all gravy and is needed more for endgame content. But that slow is so massively important early in the game that it lets you clear out hard mode, normal mode, and Arena, which is the base gameplay that 99% of players do. But you do need to know the proper gear and weapons to choose during a run in order to be able to clear out hard mode and normal mode. So let's get into that real quick. For gear, the Clockwork Mage just focuses on max DPS. For most players, most of the time, that's all rogue gear with ranger boots. Now, at some point in the future, you might want to substitute out wizard boots in certain situations or wizard ring, but that depends on the game mode and how high of a tier your gear is. For the most part, this setup will work for most people. The big thing you're getting here is just increased damage from the crit multipliers in the gloves and in the necklace, and you're getting increases to cooldown from the chest and the boots, not to mention some more projectiles. Now, she follows unique builds for Nightmare Mode or for Dragon's Tower, but you can find those in my other guides, as she doesn't deviate from the norm. On the Jewel side, you're looking to maximize her damage via cooldown. Now, she gets a lot of internal cooldown, both from her base stats and from her faction camp bonus. The 5% you can get at max level for your faction camp is actually huge. That'll save you a couple of jewels worth of cooldown. But the goal with jewels is then to complete the cap on cooldown for the given game type. Now you do have some leeway in hitting the cooldown cap with jewels in something like Nightmare Mode or Hard Mode Arena with the Clockwork Mage, because she gets cooldown from her ultimate. And that'll push you to the cap if you're not already there. Not to mention, you do need to put 1 point in her tome, so there's no need necessarily in those later game modes to hit the 40% cap. Although you should generally try and hit the 60% cap for normal mode, hard mode, and arena. After worrying about cooldown, the other things you include in most max DPS builds are ultimate duration, ultimate charge, vulnerability, projectile M, and projectile P. The general priority for regular jewels is cooldown, area effect, and critical strike. On the pet setup, I typically recommend using your highest rarity pet with your next two highest rarity pets as passives. In her case, I go Crystal Saurus main with Cyclow and Pyrocrankin as passives. If you don't have Crystal Saurus, using Basilisk is a great choice. Basilisk's ultimate slows Horde, which will help you proc her ultimate even faster. And that's the general setup that I use with the Clockwork Mage the majority of the time. That'll maximize your DPS in most game modes. You combine that with this base weapon set. My typical go-to for weapons in the Clockwork Mage is really straightforward. It's Bomb, Fire Orbs, Ice Wand, and Chain Lightning. That'll maximize your damage and add in some disruption. You're already getting the slow from her base attack, so those Ice Wands are doing extra work for any pesky horde that might get through. And I used that all through hard mode as I was clearing it out. Now, as you introduce special weapons into the build, the big ones that stand out for me are Mighty Boar, Slingshot, and Scrap Hammer. Those three weapons have some form of slow that will allow you to proc the Clockwork Mage ultimate more often. The other sleeper pick in here is Cow Whistle. Cow Whistle is the secret to late game Clockwork Mage. In game modes, like Dragon's Tower and Hard Mode Arena, Cow Whistle can end up being your second highest damage weapon. And that's because it runs on its own internal cooldown system. It's not impacted by the game mode's cooldown cap. And therefore, those herds of cows continuously run across the screen, hitting hordes that are slowed down by the Clockwork Mage. That combination puts out an extreme amount of damage for that late game content. And those are the best weapons that really complement the Clockwork Mage. And that's it. That's my guide to the Clockwork Mage. Because I put such a high emphasis on clearing arena and early game content, that's why I have her as the best hero in the game. Now there will always be other heroes slightly better than her in most game modes, but she's the jack of all trades. You can get her and be rest assured you have the ability to beat the entire game. And that's what she's meant to do, speed up the game for you, as she's the master of time. And I'm Coles, a high-level HVH player. Please like and subscribe if you like the content, and remember, ask any questions you have. It really helps with the algorithm. You can also become an executive producer. The executive producers of this video are Cake Invictus, Riverwind, TheWuba, Krabs, Charlos, Jason, Lady Ikaika, Paradox, Clinton, Sumamormy, Ark, TallaNasty, Cemar, and Bunny. Thank you everybody for your support. It really means a lot to me. And remember, always do your adventures!